As I went out from Waverly on a cold and rainy day, I was driving Aunt Kate's car in the normal way. 53 or 54, sometimes 55. I never go much faster, but somehow I survive. When I came home from Waverly, I got turned around, came back upon the very road. This is what I found. Them that were upon the left were now upon the right. It's all so damned confusing, morning, noon, and night. When I came home from Waverly, I shut the motor off. I sat a while and realized that I was terrible lost. A woman I had never known yelled at me, "Where you been?" Well, I just went off to Waverly and I come right back again. Your dinner was upon the stove, but I fed it to the cat. I'm off to play some bingo, and I just might not come back. Fine, I says, away you go. I don't mind being alone. I wonder, could you tell me though, why ever was I born? 'Cause when I got to Waverly, I got turned around, came back upon the very road. This is what I found. Them that were upon the left are now upon the right. It's probably pretty much the same, morning, noon, and night. Late at night, under cover of darkness, the black schooner puts to sea. She slips from the harbor with all sails set and drawing, but not a soul on board. Almost. Even though little Pedro was little, he'd still been chosen to fight the bull on Fiesta. His mother was very nervous about this. His father said, "Don't be silly. He's a big lad." He liked to think this, being his father. You should be proud. It's not everyone who's chosen to fight the bull on Fiesta. As for little Pedro, he didn't know what to think, except Tina Katina had the loveliest feet in the whole world. Now, Tina Catina was little Pedro's little woman, and he used to say this to her 2 or 3 times a day. You have the loveliest feet in the whole world, he'd say. She'd blush, of course, and try to conceal her feet beneath her long and lovely skirts. As for little Pedro having been chosen to fight the bull on Fiesta, Tina Catina was heard to have said, "Really? Fiesta. I'll play it for you again. Pay attention." Thousands of people dancing, laughing, joking, dancing around. Did you hear the one about the guy who didn't know the difference between incest and arson? Set fire to his sister. Everyone consuming mountains of ice cream, hot dogs, french fries, potato chips, chocolate bars, cotton candy, drinking gallons of ice-cold beer, or Coca-Cola for those who believe it is the real thing. As they waited for little Pedro to fight the bull on Fiesta. Deep in the bowels of the stadium, in a small and smelly room, little Pedro sat, trying to console his mother, who stood beside him weeping. His father was there, clutching his hat in his hands as he stared glumly at the scuff mark on his left shoe. Tina Catina came and gave him a kiss on the cheek. And she pinned a pumpkin seed over little Pedro's heart. "You have the loveliest feet in the whole world," he said. She blushed. But then it was time for little Pedro to fight the bull on Fiesta. A great roar went up in the stadium, and then a sudden hush fell as little Pedro walked out into the center of the ring, all alone, under a blaring sun that beat down on Fiesta. Last-minute bets were placed. 10 to 1 on little Pedro, said one man. "A fool and his money are soon parted," said another. There was a loud clank, and everyone's attention was drawn to the far end of the stadium, where the large black doors opened very slowly. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Little Pedro stood face to face with an ugly bureaucrat, dressed in a pinstriped suit, sallow-faced, pedantic, pliable as a thick old board is pliable, and clutching a fat brown briefcase in his grubby right hand. A deathly silence fell on the crowd as the bureaucrat proceeded to withdraw a pile of papers, which he then began to shuffle endlessly. After what seemed an eternity, he spoke. "All members of this government are honest, hardworking, and reliable." "Bull!" cried little Pedro. And a great roar went up in the stadium. But the bureaucrat shuffled his papers nervously, but stood his ground. "All people are treated as equals." "Bull!" cried little Pedro. And again, a loud roar went up in the stadium, but again, the bureaucrat shuffled his papers nervously, but stood his ground. "I'm a big baboon," he said, thinking to catch little Pedro off guard. But little Pedro was ready for him and just said nothing. And again a loud roar went up in the stadium. And again the bureaucrat shuffled his papers nervously, but stood his ground. government supports nuclear energy because it is safe, cheap, and clean. Bull! Cried little Pedro. But this time, only some of the people roared. The bureaucrat, gaining confidence, stood his ground and shuffled his papers endlessly. The monotony wore on the crowd, and they went back to the refreshment stand to replenish their supply of ice cream, hot dogs, French fries, potato chips, chocolate bars, cotton candy, gallons of ice-cold beer or Coca-Cola for those who believe, even though there exists in other jurisdictions, efficient, inexpensive public transportation, that does not mean such things are possible here. Bull! Cried little Pedro. But perhaps because their mouths were so full, only a few people roared. The bureaucrat gained more confidence and stood his ground. Now, I'm aware that we want to preserve the earth for future generations to enjoy. But that does not mean we need do without anything. Bull! Cried little Pedro. And this time, no one roared. God is on our side, said the bureaucrat. And he reached into his fat brown briefcase and withdrew thousands of free tickets for ice cream, hot dogs, French fries, potato chips, chocolate bars, cotton candy, ice-cold beer, or Coca-Cola for those who... And sensing the power of the moment, the bureaucrat turned and he looked at little Pedro and he said, "Watch. You watch this." And the bureaucrat summoned forth a great wind. And he took those thousands of free tickets and he threw them high up into the air, whereupon they fell on the crowd as snow falls on a winter's day. And the crowd went berserk. Deep in the bowels of the stadium, in that small and smelly living room, little Pedro sat at his dressing room table and looked into the mirror. So, "What now?" he says. Little Pedro ate the pumpkin seed that Tina Katina had pinned over his heart. I look in the mirror. What do I see? I see a stranger looking at me, and so I ask the stranger, "What do you see?" He said, "I see a stranger looking at me. Follow the river, follow the sea, till we come to a place. Don't it feel like a dream?" So you sit for a while in the shade of a tree for 10,000 years, and still you're not free. Simon the tailor gets in his car, and he meets you at his work, and he asks you how you are. And you say, make me a coat of 10,000 stones, one for each year that I've been alone. 10,000 years under the gun. 10,000 years been on the run, marching to the beat of a dead man's drum. Simon the tailor gets up from his desk and he goes to look out his window at the people and the traffic moving by, the people fighting to get home, the people fighting to get away from what they do. And, he calls his wife. Hey, yeah, hello? Oh, hi? You at work? Yeah. How's things? Fine. Kids? Oh yeah, they're fine. Watching TV. Okay. Well, I'll be coming along. I'm just having the worst day. Oh, I'm sorry. 10,000 years been on the run. 10,000 years been on the run, marching to the beat of a dead man's drum. Simon the tailor goes back to his office window and he looks out at the people and the traffic moving by, and it's then that he sees the black schooner plowing through the deep, dark ocean with all sails set and drawing, but not a soul on board. Simon the tailor rushes to close his office. He locks the door. He goes to the elevator and pushes the button that should take him down to the parking garage. There's the customary lurch. Simon the tailor reaches into his coat pocket and discovers a pumpkin seed. Simon the tailor eats the pumpkin seed and he imagines that he's in a field. There's a tractor coming down the country road. It's pulling a wagon. There's workers on either side of the wagon, and they're talking to each other about a murder that had happened recently, a particularly grisly affair. Rat poison in the soup is suspected. And they're all shaking their heads this way and that, but wanting to know every detail. All the details, bring me all the details, don't believe in that a thing, and in this way they pass their time. Eventually, one of the workers comes and picks him off at the stem. And then another, and another, and another. How many pumpkins can one worker reasonably be expected to carry? This is what Simon the tailor is thinking, as he and most of the pumpkins are put into the wagon and carted down the road. Later, at the barn, they're sorted. And although not perfect, he finds out that at least he's made the first cut. He and a select few are put on a second wagon, this one drawn by an old gray mare. Now, of necessity, the pumpkins have to listen to the driver's pathetic song. Some may say when you get old that it's certain you must die. A cold and heavy blanket, 6 feet over where you lie. Not I, my love, for when I'm through, I'll just come back again, as ugly as the crooked tree that my mother left me in. Should I catch you then, my love, with another by your side, you'll rue the day you looked at him. There'll be nowhere you can hide, for I am yours and you are mine. And although it causes pain, poison me 1,000 times, I'll just return again. Forever and a day, my love, yours forevermore. And I'll always be beside you. You'll always get what's for. And I'll always be beside you, my fiddle in my hands. I'll sing this song for you, my love. I'm afraid it never ends. The journey down the road, of course, gives the pumpkins an opportunity to talk among themselves. Have you ever seen such a pretty one as the color of the sky? Well, tomorrow promises to be every bit as good. It's so uplifting to have such weather this time of year. There's certainly much to be thankful for. Everyone agrees, but from deep within the pile, there's a mark that's met with stony silence. I've heard talk of the schooner. I'm not saying I've seen it. I'm just saying I've heard talk. Simon the tailor does not mention what he saw out his office window. Now, as a pumpkin, Simon the tailor has remarkably little to say. Instead, he's fascinated by his own color, his absolute orangeness, and the subtleties of his shape and form. And then his mind is barraged by a seemingly endless stream of questions. How many seeds he has inside him, for example. Oh, there's so many seeds, so little time. Say 1 in 100. 1 in 100. That'd be something to talk about. Yeah, but no. With so many pumpkins, there's bound to be troubles. An exotic virus can come, yes? Decimate an entire species, yes? Perhaps a compromise is in order. Say 1 in 200, or 1 in 230. Yes, 1 in 230. Yes. While we're at it, leadership among pumpkins is in a sorry state. All this talk about the weather, with so much to be done. Later, a woman comes and buys Simon the tailor for $3. She sticks him on her porch and goes inside to the kitchen, grabs a knife, comes back out and cuts off his top. Yes? She then scoops out all of his insides and puts them in a compost pail, seeds and all. If that's not enough, she then carves a face in him, a particularly hideous face, complete with pointy teeth and big droopy eyes. It's now impossible for anyone to see past his face. to appreciate his absolute orangeness or the subtleties of his shape and form. All the more so when she sticks a flaming candle in him and throws him on a fence post. As for leadership among pumpkins, perhaps that's a subject best left for other pumpkins. Later, the woman grabs a broom and she goes outside to beat an old cow that's tethered to a dead tree. A man happens by and he stops to inquire, "Why are you beating that cow?" If you like, I can tell you. My husband, a stubborn man, inherited this cow from his father. "Oh, she's a good cow, and she'll give you fresh milk for your evening meals." And so he brought her home and tied her to this dead tree. And true to his father's word, she gave us fresh milk for our evening meals. Years passed. One evening my husband came home. He could taste that the milk was sour. What does he do? Cuts out his own tongue. Was then able to drink the milk. Now, did I mention my husband was a stubborn man? Years passed. Each day the milk grew a little more sour. Finally, one night my husband came home. He could smell that the milk was sour. What does he do? Cuts off his own nose. Was then able to drink the milk. Did I mention my husband was a stubborn man? Years passed. Each day the milk grew a little more sour. One evening my husband came home. He could see that the milk was sour. What does he do? Was then able to drink the milk. Did I mention my husband, without a tongue, without a nose, without eyes, grew so hideous that I buried him in the backyard. And now I'm lonely and sad. And that's why I beat this cow. Just the other day, I went out past the cornfield and I saw the black schooner. Have you seen it? Well, no, I don't even believe in those kinds of things, actually. Would you like a bowl of soup? Sure, I'd love a bowl of soup. So they both go inside and have a bowl of soup. Grandmama sits on the mantle. She's been there these 50 years. Speaks to me when nights are darkest. Tells me that I have no fear. But I say I have misgivings. Silly boy, she smiles at me. Grandmama sits on the mantle. just now, oh so quietly. When they're done their soup, the woman turns to the man and says, now you tell me a story. Okay, let's see. Yeah, two lovers are walking down a country lane on a beautiful day, not winter. And they come upon a fortune teller who's coming the other way. And the fortune teller takes one look at the young man and says, you don't have long to live. Well, naturally the young man's really frightened. So he runs as fast as he can until he finds a dingy room without windows, and he locks himself inside. His lover comes running, pounding on the door, begging and pleading, come out, so that we can enjoy what time we have left. No. If I deny myself all life's pleasures, then death, when it comes, will have no sting. Well, his lover begs and pleads and pounds on the door and eventually gives up and goes away. 103 years pass. One day, the man gets it into his head that perhaps the fortune teller had been wrong. So he leaves that dingy room without windows, thinking he's going to give the fortune teller a piece of his mind, right? But of course, he finds out that they died many years earlier. So then he thinks to find his lover, with whom he'd spent so many wonderful afternoons. But he finds out that, of course, they died too, many years earlier. Although he does meet some of their children, and some of their children's children, and some of their children, and naturally this is depressing for the man, and he realizes there's nothing left for him to do but go back to that dingy room without windows where he'd spent so many years. But on his way there, of course, he's struck on the head by a falling tree, and he dies. His final thought on the matter was, perhaps the fortune teller had been right, after all. Later, when the woman is asleep, the man believes he can hear a whispering coming from the darkness across the room. He gets up and goes to the woman's dresser. There's a jar on the woman's dresser. The man takes the jar over to the window so that he might see more clearly with the help of the moon, which is full. Inside the jar, there's a tongue, a nose, and two eyes. The eyes are rolling about crazily, independent, each one from the other, and the tongue wags. Well, the man realizes that it must have been the tongue that he heard, so he picks up the jar. He lifts it up to his ear, and he hears the tongue say, "It's time for my song." There was a man, his name was Bill. He lived over by Fanny's Hill. One day he decided he'd go to sea. That was the end of Bill. There was a man, his name was John. Once was here, but now he's gone. One day he decided he'd go to sea. That was the end of John. There was a man, his name was Fred. Once got caught behind the shed. One day he decided he'd go to sea. That was the end of Fred. Okay, well, I won't bore you with the next 137 verses, but you might find the last verse interesting. So now we finally come to me, as pretty a sight as you'll ever see. One day I said, I won't go to sea. That was the end of me. Well, when the music's over, the tongue stops wagging and the eyes stop rolling about crazily, and the man puts the jar back on the woman's dresser. And he crawls back into bed, feeling slightly uneasy. The woman turns and reaches for him. She opens her mouth as though to yawn. And it's then that the man notices the black schooner inside the woman's mouth. She sits in a bay as though waiting for wind. Her sails are limp. The woman's labored breathing sends swells across the bay, causing the ship to roll heavily and the sails to slack. Well, the man tries to wake the woman, first by squeezing her breasts, then by shaking her roughly, but it's no use. She won't wake up. He then decides that he just has to close her mouth so that he doesn't have to look at the schooner. He puts one hand on top of her head and the other under her chin. And he pulls together with all the force he can summon, but without any result that can be measured. Several sleepless hours pass, with the man turning this way and that. It matters not which way he faces. The image of the black schooner inside the woman's head confronts him, indeed, beckons to him. And so finally, and after much difficulty, the man climbs inside the woman's mouth. Almost. Oh. After too long in the water, the man gives up. That's it. I've had it. Whose idea was this anyway? And then begins the long return and the search for the woman's mouth, thinking that if he can find the room, perhaps he will ask some advice from the tongue, which he assumes must still be in the jar, along with the nose and the eyes in the woman's dresser, but predictably he can't find the woman's mouth. And predictably, he comes to believe it. He's going to drown. He turns for one last look at the black schooner. A wind is picked up. Her sails are filling, and she begins to cut a line through the deep, dark waters. The man thinks to call out, but he remembers, of course, there's no one on board. And so he closes his eyes. And it's then that he sees a pig farmer behind his barn, feeding pigs. Pig farmer! Pig farmer! Yeah, yeah. Hearing, but not seeing. Pig farmer! Now the man thinks to ask for help, but instead he poses the following question. Pig farmer! Why are you wasting your time feeding pigs? What you really should be doing is, you should really develop your mind. Wife! Wife! Ha! I was out behind the barn, feeding the pigs. I heard this voice telling me I was wasting my time feeding pigs. What I really needed to be doing was, I needed to develop my mind. Your what? My mind! My mind! Well, the wife could barely contain herself. So he went to look for the parson. Parson! Parson, can I have a word with you? If you must. I was out behind the barn feeding the pigs, right? And I heard this voice telling me I was wasting my time feeding the pigs. What I really need to do is develop my mind. Your what? My mind! My mind! Well, the parson could barely contain himself. So the pig farmer went to look for his best friend, the butcher. Butcher! Butcher! Hey! I was up behind the barn feeding the pigs. I heard this voice telling me, you're wasting your time feeding pigs. What you should really do is develop your mind. Your what? My mind! My mind! Well, if you were to develop your mind, who would feed the pigs? Well, I don't know. Perhaps you'd feed the pigs. Me? I'm not a pig farmer. I'm a butcher. What? I don't know, but I have to develop my mind. So on the way home, he's confronted by the parson. Pig farmer, I would have a word with you. If you were to go and develop your mind, who would feed the pigs? Well, I don't know. Perhaps you'd feed the pigs. Me? I'm not a pig farmer. I'm a parson. Well, I don't know. But I have to develop my mind. When the parson gets home, he sees his wife. She's sitting at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the barnyard full of pigs. Where have you been? The pigs are already grown weak and thin. Get out there and feed them. I did not. I thought perhaps you could feed the pigs. Me? I'm not a pig farmer. I'm your wife. But it was too late. The pig farmer had already gone to his room and locked the door behind him. Well, the wife sat there at the kitchen table, looking out at the barnyard full of pigs, as the thing that is or is not came and took the first pig, then a second, then a third. There was a knock on the door. The wife was nervous, thinking that it was the thing that is or is not come to take her away. But it was the parson. Where is your husband? In his room. I would have a word with him. I've grown weak and thin. I too have grown weak and thin. Although I would not shun some comforting. Well, the parson did what little he could, which was little indeed, and then he left. But on the way home, he was confronted by the thing that is or is not. Parson. No, not today. Not today. I've got no time. In the end, the parson went kicking and screaming as a spoiled child. Well, the wife continued to sit at the kitchen table and look out the window at the pigs as the thing that is or is not came and took another pig, and another, and another. There was another knock at the door. The wife was nervous, thinking that it was the thing that is or is not come to take her away, but it was the butcher. "Where is your husband?" "In his room." "I would have a word with him. All of the villagers have grown weak and thin." "It's no use. I too have grown weak and thin, although I would not shun some comforting." Well, the butcher did what he could and left. On his way home, he was confronted by the thing that is or is not. "Butcher. Butcher. No, not today. Not today. I've got no time." In the end, the butcher went as a little lamb. The wife continued to sit at the kitchen table and stare out at the now empty barnyard. There was a knock at the door. "No, not today. Not today, I can't. I've got no time. Although I would not shun some comforting." In the end, the wife was comforted. The pig farmer sat cross-legged on his floor, staring at a blank wall, and he watched as his mind flitted from one thing to another. Eventually, he took to counting all the hairs on the end of his nose. It then became necessary to count all the noses on the end of each hair on the end of his nose. And then it became necessary to count all the hairs on all the noses on the end of each hair on the end of his nose, and in this way he passed his time. Hunger eventually got the better of him, and he searched through the cracks in the floor for something to eat. He came upon a dried old pumpkin seed. Well, the pig farmer ate the pumpkin seed, and no sooner had he done this than he was filled with a great light. And the light pulled the pig farmer out of his body so that he was looking back down at himself. And it was then that the pig farmer could see that he was just a hair sitting cross-legged on the end of somebody's nose. "Wife! Wife! I've developed my mind! I've developed my mind!" "Wife? Parson! Hey, Parson! I developed my mind!" "What?" "Butcher! Butcher!" So he goes back to the pigs, thinking maybe they'll be interested. "Pigs! Pigs! Pigs!" Pig farmer. Pig farmer. Pig farmer. "No, not today. I've got no time. Can't you see? I've just developed my mind." The black schooner turns smartly and heads off on a new tack. Her sails set and drawing, but not a soul on board. Somewhere, a tongue sings. There behind the shed. One day he decided he'd go to sea. That was the end of Fred. So now we finally come to me, as pretty a sight as you'll ever see. One day I said, I won't go to sea.